J&R Lamb Studios were founded in 1857 by Joseph and Richard Lamb, people who immigrated from England. It is the oldest continuously operating stained glass studio in the United States. Last year, we celebrated our 150th anniversary at the Library of Congress, which has acquired the archives of the studio, which consists of 19 order books and over 2,400 watercolor prints of stained glass windows and architectural drawings. When the studio first began in the late 1800s, they were some of the major contributors to the decoration of churches in the United States. And as the turn of the century approached, the new type of stained glass was developed called opalescent stained glass windows. And Lamb Studios and John Lafarge and Louis Comfort Tiffany and others in that field were the forerunners of this new development of opalescent stained glass windows, which were developed here in America. As the century went into the 20th century, we found that this type of glass fell out of favor, and by the early 1920s, this type of work was no longer being done. And antique painted single-layered stained glass windows were now the most popular type of work being done, which was the typical work done in the 1800s and prior centuries. Lamb Studios was not only involved just in stained glass, but in decorating entire interiors of churches. They did mosaic work, they did woodwork, lighting fixtures, the design of chancels and pulpits and lecterns and pews. And as that developed over the early 20th century, more and more churches were being built, and Lamb Studios became more in the forefront of developing the ecclesiastical fabric of the United States religious community. As we approached the 1950s and 1960s, we saw an increase in stained glass because of the wars, and more people were donating stained glass windows to churches in memory of lost ones during those terrible wars. In the 1960s and 1970s, we started to see a decline in new stained glass windows. And as America got older, the stained glass windows that were made at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s started to fall in disrepair, to the point where today, most of our work, I would say approximately 75% of our work, is now in the restoration of stained glass windows. And new stained glass is produced in less quantity because of the decline in church and synagogue building in the United States. The restoration of stained glass windows is a new industry. It is something that everyone is learning about new. And we at Lamb Studios are at the forefront of that new development in stained glass industry. Along with this restoration of the stained glass is the protective covering of these stained glass windows, which to our knowledge from past years was never vented, and we definitely vent all of our protective coverings, whether it be plexiglass or plate glass or laminated safety glass. This is an extremely important aspect to the preservation of the lead on the stained glass window, so that there's a proper airflow and heat does not get trapped in that airspace, which can cause corrosion of the lead cames. For now, this is where we are with our major work, and we are working throughout the United States doing this type of work, and are available for free consultations to evaluate stained glass windows and give our expert advice as to what needs to be done for your windows.
Hi, I'm Donna Samek, and I'm one of the owners at Lamb Studios, with my co-owner with my husband Donald Samek. I was commissioned to do the side window which faced the street of the building. And the side of the building was like this. Of course, this was 12 years ago. The front of this church was less these smaller columns, and I told them to add these columns to it to make it smaller. And it had two exit doors that were bright red, which were really not very nice looking from the street. The final project was with this cross, and it's when I was making this cross, I accidentally damaged the sample that I was making. It has a little tear in it, and I felt that I should keep that little tear because that little tear in the cross represented the imperfections of life today. And the priest at this church really liked that idea, and he created a whole sermon around it. Inside the church, you can see it's a silhouette of the cross on the outside. They came to me and they wanted me to duplicate this window. I do not like to duplicate windows, but I did like to create the same design for them. With the church, the framework, it had a cross that it was existing in the frame with the circles. So I created, designed around that. And what I did is I enhanced the cross by doing a border around it in the darker blue. And I also did the background of this design in the blue to bring out the border in the cross. And it worked out very well. I did more of a yellow, starburst sort of design, and they were very pleased with it. And I had to also keep within a budget. So I had to create how many pieces of glass per foot in the window to keep the budget within the budget. And that's one thing artists hate to do, is have a budget. So I had no painting in this window, no shading, everything had to be done by glass, and I did personally pick out the glass so that I would get some shading in it.
This is a new stained glass project that we've done over the past 8 years in Sugar Land, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. We designed 3 stained glass windows that are 20 feet by 35 feet high. They were designed by our artist that has been working with Lamb Studios for the past 25 years. His name is Roy Coomer. He lives in England. And in this case, the situation was the church selected him as their artist that they wanted to use. And so Roy came over to Texas with me, and we met with the committee and explained to them how we would work together. Roy actually painted the windows in England and cut the glass. He fired the glass, and then he shipped over all the pieces of that in boxes to us. We did the assembly here, and then we installed the windows. This is an example of the expansiveness of the Stained Glass Studio and how we can reach out over the oceans of time and oceans of the world to provide stained glass windows. We also do interior designing of churches, and these are photographs of the before and after shots of a church in South River, New Jersey, where we designed the entire interior, removed all the flooring and the pews, and put a new oak floor down, and redesigned the chancel area, and put a stained glass window in the wall. Here in the West Side Presbyterian Church in Ridgewood, New Jersey, they had a disastrous fire about 5 years ago, and the windows were made by Lamb Studios in 1924, and all the windows were destroyed. Well, through our records and photographs that we had taken of the church prior to the fire, we were able to reduplicate the windows using a different, more modern design, but it is Christ with the shepherd and the sheep in the background. And this is the final job that they did there. and we're very happy to have been able to serve this church again so many years later.